No man is more professional than I. I am a 1% man. I am not above or below any man. I'm training my mind. I'm building my body. I'm connecting to my soul. I'm investing my money. Welcome to the 1% Man Podcast. Let's go. 3, 2, 1. I want to welcome you back to the 1% Man Podcast. My name is Coach B, and I'm here with Rakim Sabri. That's it, right?
Rakim.
Damn. Rakim. Why? I don't know what it is, man. I don't know what it is. I think maybe it must be a like nervous twitch because I mess either it's the first or the last name of people, and you know how to say something and then you just don't say it. Oh God! God! Work here with me. So, Mr. Sabri,
working with you.
Appreciate it, brother. Now, you're a TEDx talker, an author, financial coach, and you've been in multiple publications: Business Insider, Contributor, Entrepreneur. I just made it to Entrepreneur, so now I feel like I'm in the big leagues with you.
Yes, sir.
And then also on the TEDx stage, like the big stage. How was that feeling being on TEDx?
I was terrified.
Really?
I was terrified. Man. So I remember being more nervous than I had ever been. When I was behind the curtain, they were getting ready to say my name, and the host who was back there with me was like, "Listen, you made it this far. Whatever you do is whatever you do." And that kind of eased my nerves a little bit. I went out there, I made a joke, so the audience laughed. But I was still very nervous. Once I got into the flow of my talk, which I did not memorize word for word, I lost everything. Like there was a point where I just completely forgot everything in my talk. So I'm looking out into this audience. There's a bunch of faces staring back at me. And I'm like, oh no, like get it back. And of course you have to like not panic on stage or at least not look like you're panicking. So there's instances like if anybody watches my talk, there's instances where people are interpreting my response or my pause as me being overcome by emotion, when the emotion that was overcoming me was the fact that I forgot.
Wow, this is like TEDx, like backstage.
Behind the scenes, right? Like
right, exactly.
Nobody would ever know this. But yeah, there's like maybe 2 instances where I pause and I just like take a deep inhale and exhale. And in that moment, I forgot the entire flow of my talk. Now, the way that TEDx is set up on the stage in front of the speaker, there's 3 monitors. There's one monitor that is your slideshow. There's one monitor that is the clock, letting you know how much time you have left. And then there is one monitor that is like your notes. So like you have like a 1-page notes. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, I was able to find my spot. But I had to remember the sequence of my talk in comparison to the slides that were coming, in comparison to what I had on the notes, while being mindful of how much time I had left. So I'm seeing the clock tick down. So there's a lot of external factors that are impacting your nerves there, besides the fact that you're on stage doing a TED Talk that you know is going to be posted on YouTube forever. And the audience, like all of them, are just very focused, honed in on you. So terrifying, but it was a really good experience. When I got off the stage, there was a line of people who were waiting to greet me, letting me know how good the talk was, how impactful some of the things that I said were, wanting to connect. And it was really just a huge opportunity for me that opened up doors. I mean, I can't think of the number of opportunities that I've been able to at least be exposed to as a result of having done that.
No doubt, because I love that TEDx talk. And also one of the things is I'm glad that you're still alive. Your sister didn't kill you. So in the beginning, I thought that was great. But we're definitely going to dive into that. But before we dive into today's topic and about, the TEDx speech that you gave, I want to ask you 3 questions so we get to know you better. Is that cool?
Sure.
So knowing everything, knowing everything you know right now, right? What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Uh, I think about this all the time. And, obviously you can't, the rules of time and that it's, not linear is that you can't go back and influence the past without changing the future. So without giving away any of the major upsets, disappointments, or great joys that I've experienced, I would tell my 18-year-old self definitely to start investing early. So I always knew, and money is kind of central to the themes that I talk about. I always knew that it was important to save, but I didn't always know what I should be saving for. At 18 years old, I had a bank account, but I could have opened up a brokerage account. I didn't know that. I could have started putting money away. I probably would have started investing in Apple way early. Probably would have started investing in Tesla or Amazon way early. And just I have a delayed gratification kind of modality. And I've always had that. So I think I would be a lot more wealthy today. Just kind of based off of that advice, like, hey, can't tell you what to invest in, but you need to invest ASAP. Outside of that, I would say that your journey is yours. Don't let outside influences, pressures, or expectations dictate what you do for you. I think if I would have learned that lesson earlier, maybe the direction of my life would have changed a little bit. What else? I would have said just have the audacity to just go get what you want. I think I've always embraced kind of like this limitless mindset, right? It's something that was ingrained in me growing up, but behind the veil of what is courtesy, what is, not going against the grain, what is not making waves, there's instances and opportunities that maybe I did not take advantage of because I was afraid to speak up. So I would have told myself definitely back then, like, listen, be provocative, say what you got to say, ask for what you want, because the worst thing that can happen is somebody say no.
Oh, exactly. I love that. I love that, man. Because today, especially, I'm reaching out to probably maybe like 100 people, and if they say no to come on the podcast, like they say no. You know what I mean? I think that's a huge thing too, and I think even for us as men too, even in our finances, asking for a raise, even at the job, and or even going out and asking a girl out, like, hey, you want to go out with me? It's like, oh man, might be the scariest thing in the world, but she says no. We're not gonna die. We feel like it, but we're not gonna die. So I love what you said. Now, question number two. If you had to be an expert in another space besides personal finance and being a financial coach, what would it be and why?
Nutrition.
Nutrition.
Nutrition. I think nutrition is a space that we kind of acknowledge culturally, right, in this country as more of luxury instead of like necessity. And so understanding the impact of the relationship between nutrition and what performance looks like, understanding the impact of what nutrition has on your spirituality, right? There are people who are very spiritual people who refuse to eat meat, and for a variety of reasons. So just kind of understanding, like, how do you feed your body in the best way for optimal results, not just physically, but in terms of mental clarity, in terms of where is your groundedness and spirituality. I think that's a space that I would probably love to be in.
I love that. I think nutrition and performance goes hand in hand. And I love what you said, how we see it as a luxury here, not a necessity, because other places it is necessity. And they do have they that's probably one of the first things they budget besides like space for for the rent or whatever. But yeah, food is something that is super scarce in other places, as is, but here in America is super abundant and we waste it like crazy. So yeah, number three. What is one value you believe all men should learn to make it a better place for everyone?
I think, man, there's a million running through my head. I'm gonna pick one. I'm gonna pick one, and that is just kind of disregarding or rejecting scarcity. So when we talk about scarcity, and I'll bring this into the world of finance, talk about scarcity relating to money, right? That creates a lot of competition, if you will, because if you have it, then that means that I can't have it. So I want what you have because there's not enough of what you have out there for me to have that as well. And so with that, there's unhealthy competition that is created based off of this idea that there's not enough for everybody. Whereas if we embrace an abundance mindset relating to finance or anything else, then I think there will be a lot more collaboration happening, because if you have it, then that means that I can have it. So I'm going to help you get it so that in turn I can go out and figure out how to get it for myself, or leverage the relationship based off of my helping you to get that thing for me as well. And that thing could be where you live. It could be what you wear. It could be the type of job that you have. It could be the relationship that you have with your family in terms of the lifestyle that you live. So when you're not competing based off of like this scarcity or consumerism that exists, you get to really kind of live your best life and be of service to other people in a way that I don't think is present today.
Man, wow. I like that you didn't just say, oh, have an abundant mindset, but you said reject it, like reject that idea of scarcity. I think that's super big as well. And I think that's something that we've both done in our space that we're both doing now. So, which is great. Yeah. And I definitely appreciate that. So today we're definitely going to talk about how to overcome past financial family, I want to say, I don't want to say family indoctrination to finance, because, but, or I should even say, rising the standard of finance in your own life and getting into that area, because something that you shared was on your TEDx talk, which is definitely going to be linked in the show notes, bro, for everybody. But you shared that there was a ceiling that you just wanted to be poor. Can you talk more about that? Because not everybody's listening to your TEDx talk, but you talk about why you wanted to be poor and why was that the standard for you?
Yeah. So, just kind of giving more color to that statement, I go through a series of, in the TEDx talk, I go through a series of ages and what I aspire to be from a career perspective. At 5, I said I wanted to be an architect. At 10, I said I wanted to be a psychologist. At 12, I said I wanted to be a psychiatrist.
Because they get paid more.
Because they get paid more. And then I said at 15, I decided I wanted to be poor. And I knew that was like hook, line, and sinker, right? For the audience, everybody is looking at me like, what is he talking about?
True. Because when I was listening, that's when it got real quiet. And it was just like,
yeah.
And I poked up. I was like, whoa, what did he say? So, yeah. My bad for interrupting.
That was very strategic. I really wanted to capture the audience's attention when I said that. But I go on to say that it wasn't that I wanted to be poor. It was that I noticed how my mom in particular was surviving, because I became conscious of the household finances. My parents had separated. I knew that we had food stamps. I carried the food stamps card. I knew that we had Section 8. I knew that we were behind on rent. I mean, I saw eviction notices on the door that I removed. I had to have adult conversations with my mom at a very young age around like, what's happening right now? And my mom kind of like never let me sweat it. Like she was always kind of like, it's going to be fine. And fast forward X number of years, right? Let's call it 15, 15 years later, I realized that my mom was probably just as terrified as I was, but she had to present this like front for her children, like everything's going to be okay. We're going to figure it out. And I just knew that at the very least, I want to be able to do what she was doing. So I aspired to mimic the behaviors that I witnessed. I aspired to have food stamps. I aspired to have Section 8. I aspired to survive, especially in that environment. I grew up in Westchester County, New York. Very expensive. And I didn't think that there was more, because I didn't know that there was more. Like I went shortly after that, started working in a supermarket. And I remember seeing people come through the cashier's lane, paying with credit and debit and cash. And I'm not understanding how they're able to afford that when we have to use food stamps. So I'm like, man, like these people must be rich. And, like I said, fast forward 15 years or so, like I don't have food stamps. I've never had food stamps. I can buy whatever I want when I go grocery shopping. But that wasn't the reality that I was seeing at that time. So based off of what I was seeing, and you kind of touched on this off when we were talking before this, money is not talked about in the household, right? We don't understand, or we're not taught strategies around how to use money in a survival situation or how to use money in a thriving situation. So my mom didn't know that I was taking note of what it was that she was doing to survive. She didn't know that I was incorporating this into my psyche and saying, you know what, this is what I aspire for. She was just doing what she had to do. It was like a day-to-day kind of existence, or maybe a week-to-week existence. And because we didn't have that conversation, like, imagine if I didn't have the perspective that said, oh no, there's more out there, you can have more. And I just settled on, well, this is the life that's for me. This is how my mom did it. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to continue to, in the back of my mind, wish that I could be a millionaire, right? Like, that's a very far distant, kind of scratch off lottery ticket existence. That's not something that I could build. And so the mindset shift comes in where you realize what's possible, but then you find a way to connect what's possible to what is possible for you, and how do you make that happen?
Oh man, and we definitely need to talk about that today. But something that you touched on that I really love is that, especially in Black households and men of color, right? We don't talk about money enough, right? Money is a very taboo subject. Parents handle the finances. Kids kind of go about their lives, not really worried about money, right? We eat, whether we see, food stamps, whether we see the EBT card, or that we're in Section 8, and we don't really know it, but it's like there and it's present, right? Now, for us now growing up, and we're trying to have this abundant mindset, right? And we're trying to understand that, hey, look, even though that we came from a household where like this, where the ceiling is now our floor, and we're looking up, and I bet you've heard this plenty of times, is that when we look up, we're like, a lot of people around us start to tell us, especially when we start to think big about money in our community, we hear, no, that's the white people. No, that's the white people, right? How do we get over that mindset of like, hey, look, having a lot of money is for me. Having a lot of money isn't just for white people, but it's for me. It's possible. I'm Black, or I'm brown, I'm green, or whatever, but I can have money. I don't need to just be white to have money.
Yeah, I think representation is key in that particular instance. So, and I talk about this all the time. You go out and you poll anybody, and you could do this, right? You ask anybody that you encounter, who are the top 3 financial gurus that they've heard of, right? You're going to probably hear a Dave Ramsey, a Susie Orman, a Rob Kiyosaki, maybe Tony Robbins, maybe Grant Cardone. He's, new and hot on the scene. But I'm pressed to think of a financial guru that looks like me, right? Now, I've learned since entering the space that there are a ton of Black men and women who are in the financial education space, or who are doing things relating to finance, whether that's heavy investing in real estate, heavy investing in the stock market, educating on the different ways to find and identify opportunities to make money. But it took me doing some looking and getting involved in this community. So the answer to your question is, we need more of that celebrated. We need more of that promoted, and not just promoted within the networks or pockets of community that we go to, right? So Robert Kiyosaki is not just celebrated in just kind of think of one news network that is specific to a particular demographic. Robert Kiyosaki's work is celebrated across all cultures, all barriers. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's just Rich Dad Poor Dad is a household name. So how do we get our work celebrated in that way? That everybody is embracing it, that everybody is acknowledging it, that everybody knows it as a household name. And that it's not just, well, this Black guy created financial literacy content for a Black audience, so white, Asian, whoever can't consume that content. But at the same time, maintain the integrity and the delivery of our content that says, this is the audience that I wrote for. You all can benefit from this, but this is the audience that I had in mind when I wrote. Because I can guarantee you that Robert Kiyosaki, Grant Cardone, Dave Ramsey, like Susie Orman, all of these guys are not writing for Black people. You know what I'm saying? They're writing for the people that look like them. And that's perfectly okay in their world. But we need to understand too, and when I say we, I mean like Black financial educators or educators of color, right? We need to understand that our presence in this space is validating somebody else's experience. It's saying, oh, I can have what he has. I can be what he is. I can do what he's done. And so I teeter on this line. My mom always gets on my case about it. I teeter on this line of transparency and saying, this is what I've accomplished. This is where I've arrived. My mom's like, everybody doesn't need to know your business, right? Everybody doesn't need to know what your credit score is. Everybody doesn't need to know how much credit you have available to you or what you're invested in the stock market or, you know, that you have 6-figure investment portfolio. And I'm like, no, everybody doesn't need to know that. But some people need to know that to see that it's possible, that I don't have to be a 45-year-old or 50-year-old white man to do this, that I can be 31 years old and still in this world making things happen.
No, exactly. I love that you said representation because that matters. And I want to actually a second question before we dive a little deeper is how do we bring it up to our family when they're telling us not everybody needs to know that they want to shelter it off. They don't want to show anybody, right? How did you push through that? How did you push through that, through that hardship, right? Or through that barrier for yourself? And then how can we, the listeners, push through that and start to share it ourselves with our family?
So I have a two-part answer to that question. The first part is that my story is my story, right? Both my parents, after I did my TEDx talk, reached out to me. Now, my parents do not communicate with each other, but they both reached out to me and they acknowledged some of what I shared as being pain in my experience, my coming of age experience, right? Their feedback was kind of similar, but also very different in that they both acknowledge, like, you know what, Rakim, like, that's your story. And if that's how you're going to tell your story, then tell your story that way. But also saying that, you know, we weren't really struggling the way that you portray in your talks, right? And so I had to kind of reconcile with that and saying, well, my worldview, my experience was everything that I talked about in that TED Talk, right? I had to wash clothes in the sink because we couldn't afford to go to the laundry mat. You know what I'm saying? I had to rip eviction notices off the door. I had to go to the grocery store and walk out embarrassed after dumping the cart of groceries onto the conveyor belt and not having enough money to pay for these groceries. So the way that those things impacted me from a perspective of shame, from a perspective of fear, from a perspective of wondering, like, what the hell is going on? Those shaped a lot of my motivations around learning about financial education and implementing strategies that I've learned that then in turn became a passion around educating others who look like me. So, you know, they can't take that away from me. So standing on my square, if you will, in terms of what is my experience and how that experience has shaped the work that I do and the passion behind the work that I do was key to me kind of overcoming, we'll call it the noise of, you know, people on the outside. They had to reconcile, or, I mean, I don't know if they have or if they haven't, you know, not my business, but they had to reconcile with themselves based off of their experience at that particular point in time in their lives, how our situation financially was represented to me and how that impacted the way that I view money later on. Second part to my answer is that I'm trying to remember your question again. How do we
talk to our, yep.
So there's a book that I read. It's called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. I quote that book quite a lot through my own book, Financially Irresponsible. And so understanding the psychology behind why we choose to shelter our wealth and shelter a lot of the behaviors that we have as we interact with mainstream, we'll call it a mainstream white world, right? That's a trauma. That's a psychological, generational trauma that we perpetuate over and over and over again. The reason why Black people, or one of the reasons I should say, why Black people do not want to show their wealth or get comfortable in wealth building practices is because there's an element of fear there that our wealth will be taken from us, right? So with understanding that psychological trauma, I made a tweet the other day as a kind of, I don't want to say emotional, but certainly in touch with reality rant about how Black trauma impacts our view on money, whether that is spending, whether that is a lack of saving or retirement planning or investing. Because if we don't believe as Black men that we're going to exit our 20s and live into our 30s and our 40s and our 60s and our 70s, then why is a financial educator like me telling them that they need to be planning for retirement, right? Why is a financial educator like me telling them that they need to invest with a minimum of a 10-year advanced view of what that can look like? Because I don't believe that I'm going to exit my 20s YOLO, right? I want to enjoy my money. I want to enjoy my experience because tomorrow I could be pulled over and that could be the last of my interactions. Or I could be walking down the street and that could be the last of my interactions. So there is an element of cultural sensitivity that financial educators need to have when they're talking about these topics, because you're dealing with generations of trauma, psychological trauma that is not going to be undone by a financial literacy course.
Man, that was so heavy. I mean, and there's so much that we need to unpack right there. But something that I really want to pull from that is if now that we understand that, hey, this is our story. This is how money impacted us. Now we understand that there is psychological trauma involved that's generational, being passed down from generation to generation. Us as men that want to be fathers and that want to be able to help our kids and, even talk to our wives. What can we do now so that way we can actually start saving money? We can actually start having a better relationship with money, because I think a lot of us may know this, but how do we actually put the, as they say, apply the pen to paper, apply the knowledge and transfer it into wisdom, so that way we actually start to save the money. We actually start to have more money in our accounts. So what do we do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's the space that I'm in, right? So I talk about financial literacy, but I talk more about financial empowerment. And the difference between the two is that exactly what you said. There are a lot of people out there who know what they should be doing, but they're not doing it because they don't feel empowered to do it, right? They don't feel empowered to go out and make this difference. I think it's a respect thing. There's a term in the book that I referred to, post-traumatic slave syndrome, that Dr. DeGrois coins as vacant esteem. So it's not even low self-esteem. It's the absence of esteem. We're living this just very vacant existence. And how do you fill yourself from a perspective of vacancy, right? Like you try to be everything that the world is showing you outside of you, right? You try to either embrace what is the dominant white culture or you reject it vehemently, right? Like you're just like, nope, I want to be double down in my Blackness. And then you have the people who exist in this middle space, right? The people who become expert code switchers, who know how to walk in both worlds, but then because they have this double identity, they don't know who they are, right? And that's in full transparency, that's a space that I navigate. I'm a 10-year banking veteran. So I've been in the corporate world now for 10 years. I remember at 21 years old, when I started as a part-time teller, I would show up to work with earrings in my ear, right? I had earrings in both ears. And one day, a manager or supervisor or somebody came in and said, "You wearing earrings to work is not professional." So I stopped wearing earrings to work. when you think about how much of your week are you at work, especially if you're doing full time, most of the time I'm not wearing earrings. So why am I putting earrings on when I get out of work? Like, why am I in a rush to put the earrings back on? Eventually it just got to a point where I was not wearing earrings at all. But that was not because, I mean, part of it was because I chose to, but that was not because I just grew out of wearing earrings. That was because I was told that the way that I was showing up was unprofessional, and I wanted to be professional. Also, the way that you talk, you know what I'm saying? Your tone, your pitch, how you hold your body, you know, your body language, what you say, what you don't say, what you laugh off. All of those things are influenced by what is that dominant corporate culture, right? So I became somebody in my work life that started to leak out into my personal life, such that when I would have conversations with my friends who were not about that life, they would ask me, like, why are you talking like that? Why are you talking like, you know, you're in a meeting? I'm like, this is how I talk. No, that's not how you talk. That's not how you talk to me. Like, you know, so I had to figure out then, like, how do I become me again? You know, how do I step into me where I'm not ignorant, I'm not showing off like this lack of polish. I certainly want to be able to walk into and be acknowledged as a professional, but how do I maintain who I am? So when I started in my personal branding journey, I would walk around with a jacket on, sometimes a tie. Like, I thought that that's what I needed to do. That's what I needed to be professional. And only recently did I get comfortable with saying, you know what, like, my credibility speaks for itself. I could show up with a t-shirt and jeans on. My tattoos can be on full display. And it doesn't take away from the knowledge that I have, because I've already done all of those things. But when you're not known and you want people to take you seriously, you go to what the dominant culture says is acceptable. Dress shirt, tie, jacket, fresh haircut, you know what I'm saying? How do we, I'm answering your question in a very long-winded way, but I'm doing it intentionally. How do we get out of that? You hire people like me is the short answer, right? People who acknowledge your existence, who acknowledge your experience, who can relate to your experience, right? Because we're talking about psychological trauma, right? So it's more than just me coming to you and telling you, okay, well, you need to have a budget. Me coming to you and saying, okay, you need to have savings. You need to establish a retirement plan. You need to have life insurance. Like, yes, it's important to get exposure to those things, but it's also important to unpack the different experiences that we have that keep us from doing those things. So when I coach, I focus 90% of my coaching conversations have nothing to do with money, have everything to do with your mindset. What do you believe about money? Why do you believe about money, right? Do you subscribe to the belief that money is the root of all evil? Why? Right? We say that, and we don't know why we say that, but we just say, oh, it's in the Bible. It's not in the Bible, right? The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil, but we have abbreviated that to say, and I've accepted that and saying, well, if you have a lot of money, you must have done something criminal, right? You must have sold your soul, right? You must be a part of some secret society, right? And or you're a drug dealer, you know what I'm saying? You're a ball player, you're a rapper. Like, for whatever reason, we can't conceptualize this idea that by executing on very simple but consistent disciplines, we can build wealth. All of us can build wealth. And we don't have to be a millionaire. You don't have to be making a millionaire salary, or you don't have to be making a six-figure salary to do this. You just prioritize your financial future and you'll be okay. You learn the game and you'll be okay. But how do we prioritize that, right? So then you talk about the variables that exist in our community, where you have babies making babies, right? So now you have, I'm a product of that. My parents were 17, 18 years old when I was born. So how do they prioritize their finances personally while also caring for a child as children, right? They're not even in their peak earning years. they're not even getting started in their earning years, right? 18, 17, and 18, you're still in high school. You haven't even graduated yet. So, there's just, it's more than just money. It's more than just financial literacy. And I hear a lot of like financial experts or financial educators talk about the lack of financial literacy. We don't talk about it in school. We don't learn about this from our parents. We don't learn about it from our parents because our parents don't know. They can't give you what they don't have. But more than that, if it was taught in school, there needs to be a way to draw parallels or to put it in a way that is contextual so that they can say, okay, these things are possible. This is the building blocks to a financially sound existence. But I'm 17, 18 years old with a child at home. Well, how do I take these principles and start planning for my child's future? Or how do I take money out of my child's mouth today for their being able to eat tomorrow, right? It's a prioritization thing. And I'm not pretending by any means to have all the answers, but I think that piece is a piece that is underrepresented when we talk about understanding the psychology and the traumas that are perpetuated generationally. I use a term that has become a buzzword in my book, generational curses. Like, how do you break generational curses? Well, first you have to acknowledge what the curse is. And then you have to be the person to decide, you know what, I'm not going to perpetuate this. And I'm not going to let my children perpetuate this. And I'm going to lay a foundation so that my children's children don't perpetuate this because I'm going to stop it right here and right now.
Yes. I love that. I love that. But before we go, I want to talk about something that you said on your TEDx talk, which was you have to build your team, right? So can you talk about how can we build a team around our finances? And what does that team look like? Is that our family? Is that friends? Is that a financial advisor? What does that look like?
I think it's going to vary, certainly from person to person and based off of what your ability for exposure looks like, right? So in a perfect world, our team would consist of people that look like us. But maybe people that look like us don't have the knowledge, right? The exposure to go out and provide us with those foundational materials. In that case, you have to look outside of your community, right? And that was certainly the case for me. My exposure to personal finance came through the vein of working in banking as a career, but the people that I worked with were not Black people. And I made friends with them. And we would have conversations and I'm like, whoa, like you guys talk about money openly. You guys talk about credit openly. You talk about retirement openly. Well, let me soak in some of this material, right? You have an 800 credit score at 26. Like, okay, I want to have an 800 credit score. What do I have to do to get there? Just that osmosis interaction was huge for me in that I was able to meet the standard that they had established for themselves, maybe unknowingly, but also exceed that standard, right? So 800 I thought was like the ceiling until I walk into a car dealership to buy a car and they say, your credit score is 835. I'm like, oh. They're like, yeah, your credit score is pretty high. And I'm like, well, I know it's pretty high. I just didn't know it was that high. But then, also kind of stepping into the power that comes with commanding a credit score like that and feeling empowered to say, like, now that you recognize who I am and what my credit standing looks like, I'm going to flex a little bit and say, hey, you know what? I don't want to put a down payment on this car, right? I don't want to pay more than this amount. This is what I'm willing to do. And if you're not cool with that, I'll go somewhere else. But like I said, I've had to learn to have that kind of audacity, that kind of gall from interacting with other people who did it, right? Like I was, and I'm going to be borderline inappropriate here. There is all of this like comedy around the idea of Karens, right? Like Karens go into the different stores and they want to speak to the manager and they have a specific tone and a specific cadence around how they communicate what they want. And working in banking, I dealt with a lot of Karens, right? a lot of Karens that had money. And I could see the impact of their balances on how quickly a resolution was developed from leadership that was completely contrary to what we was trained in how to resolve this issue, right? They're going up to the manager, they're going up to the market manager, they're going up to the district and regional managers. Sometimes they're going up as high as the CEO, and they're getting what they want. So why don't we have that in us to say, you know what, like, no, I know that I'm right. I know that I deserve this level of service. These are the balances that I carry in this bank. This is what I want. Make it happen. And not necessarily just in the banking world, but any world. Like, we take so much garbage in terms of how we're treated because we're taught not to make waves, not to make a scene. Don't be ghetto. Don't be loud. But the Karens of the world will go in there and they'll do exactly the same thing that we're told not to do. So understanding like how the game works is important to what success looks like. And so, like I said, sometimes going outside of your community is necessary. I've surrounded myself with real estate agents, lenders, financial advisors, CPAs, other people who are doing, like I said, friends, coworkers who were doing the things that I wanted to do, and said, okay, let me create a rough draft for what this is going to look like in my world, and then let me be that person for somebody else.
No, I totally love that. I totally love that. And now, two, you also have a book and you have a course. So can you tell us more about the book and the course and why we should be looking to invest in ourselves and get that?
Absolutely. So the book is called Financially Irresponsible. It's actually my second book. Was a bestseller on Amazon twice. And Financially Irresponsible is titled that way very much intentionally. So you can notice a theme in the way that I teach. I like to be very provocative, right? I like to catch people's attention and make them stop for a second and say, whoa, what's that about? And so Financially Irresponsible is divided into two parts. First part talks about mindset. What is your spiritual and mental relationship with money? Second part talks about your actual relationship and how to utilization of money. I introduce concepts, terms, experiences that I've had between, building up that 800 credit score, going into car dealerships, the shift in mindset that occurred for me around how I view money. And I take those experiences and I share those in the text. At the end of the book, there's a glossary as well that exposes you to, or it's kind of like an introductory crash course, if you will, a bunch of different financial terms. It's by no means financial advice, but it does provide, I think, a framework and a baseline introduction to money and a unique perspective on money, because I talk about concepts in ways that most traditionalists in the financial world probably won't.
I like that. I like that. So anyone listening right now, if you DM me, take a screenshot of this episode, post it, tag myself and my brother here, and I will actually pay for your book. So the next 5 people that are listening now, right? All you got to do is take a screenshot of this episode, post it, tag both of us, and I will get your book for you. Next 5 people. So, and then tell us about the course, right? So what is the course? And who does it help? And, sell the course to us, sell it. And don't be humble. Don't be humble at all.
So the course is called Improve Your Money Mindset. And really the course was born out of interest, right? So people would read my book and they would want more. They would want something a little bit more personalized, really just kind of asking, do you have any courses available that talk about the things you talk about in your book? So I dive in to some of the concepts that I discuss in the book specific to mindset. I do not talk about specific strategies around making money necessarily, and certainly don't lead with that. But I talk about how do you examine your beliefs? How do you examine what is a scarcity or a poverty mindset and what is an abundance mindset? How do you use the law of attraction to your benefit? And what are the drawbacks to using the law of attraction, right? A lot of people talk about the positive side of, manifesting, but they don't talk about the challenges that come with that manifestation. So I talk about that a little bit. Talk about fear, how to use fear as an ally. And I just kind of go through different concepts that would detract from what is your financial success. I think about, on average, 10-minute video segments, very easy material to get through. There is a pre-course survey. There are quizzes at the end of each segment to really kind of make sure that you're focusing and reflecting on what it is that I discussed. And there are a bunch of resources included, some challenges in there, definitely downloadable. It's a lot of fun stuff in there, but I think it really could help anybody who is interacting with money, which is anybody in the world, but specifically people who are having a really hard time getting to that place of empowerment, right? So we talked about all the people who understand financial literacy but won't take action. This course is geared towards helping you take action.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So this is the part of, before we go, I always like to give the interviewer, the person that's getting interviewed, a time to share with us something like, it's called the last word. So something that, whether it's a mantra, an affirmation, or something that you want to tell us before we leave this episode that we can carry with us into our lives. What is the last word for you?
Definitely. So I use this term, I coined this term in my book. It's called Believe in the Impossibility of Impossibility. And really that's just a very nice way of saying to reject the belief that there is anything that is impossible, particularly for you. I think that's been central to my success with embracing a limitless mindset and saying that, you know what, if I can conceive it in my mind that it's something that is possible, I just need to figure out how to connect the dots and make that happen. So I'm going to say it again, believe in the impossibility of impossibility.
And my brother, you heard it here first. Your legacy starts today. Thank you, my friend, for tuning into today's episode. This means so much to us over here at the 1% Man community. Now, we want to extend a hand of gratitude to you. So I have a free gift for you. All you have to do is go to www.the1percentman.com/podcast gift. This is an exclusive gift for listeners that tune into our podcast. So go over there, get that free gift as well. And now I have two simple acts of you. One, hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment and a 5-star review, because that helps us to see what you love about the podcast, and that helps us to bolster up in the rankings so more people can find us and listen to this pertinent information that we have for men of today's age. Last but not least, I want you to go back and listen to this podcast. Find just one thing that you can implement in your life today so you can move forward. Remember, progress over perfection. And till next time, my friend, your legacy starts today.